Hello to all participating. My name is Gottfried. I am a project leader of the Bloom Bioeconomy project in Austria from the Ecosocial Forum in Austria and Europe. This webinar is organized within this bioeconomy project together with the Bonn Science Shop and with Vetenskap Allmänhet, a Swedish NGO. I would like to welcome you to our webinar. We have 1 hour of interesting presentations about the textile industry ahead of us. A special welcome to our speakers, Cornelia Voss from the Bonn Science Shop, Elin Larsen from Resource Sweden, and Caroline Ledl from Lenzing, Austria. I have prepared a short video for you about the project, and then we start with the presentations.
Bloom brings together partners from across Europe to debate, communicate, and engage the civil society on the potential of bioeconomy. What is bioeconomy? Well, bioeconomy covers a broad range of sectors, from the agro-food industry and fisheries to biorefineries, biochemicals, bioenergies, and forestry. 5 regional hubs have been established to foster public engagement in the bioeconomy and to create a space of knowledge exchange and dialogue. To reach out to younger generations, teachers from 10 European countries are developing, testing, and implementing education curricula on bioeconomy. The hubs focus on different bioeconomy areas important to each region, with the aim of enlarging regional bioeconomy networks. Civil society organizations, business, media, young citizens, and the general public are also involved in a number of co-creation workshops and outreach activities. Stay updated on how Bloom is engaging EU citizens and civil society in the bioeconomy and how you can get involved via the project website and social media, www.bloom-bioeconomy.eu.
Now, I would like to start with Cornelia's presentation.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Cornelia Voss and I'm working for the Bonn Science Shop since 1991 and started there with the topic of environmental and health compatibility of textiles. The textile production chain includes a multitude of individual work steps. Some production stage, for example, the creation of fiber, dyeing and finishing, involve a stronger environmental footprint than others. And depending upon how a pair of jeans is dyed or treated, determines what effects it may have on the environment, the workers, and the wearer's health. The key factor in textile ecology is beneath water and energy the use of chemical substances and their effect on man and environment. Thanks to the current technological achievements, almost everything is possible without the use of a chemical club. Today I would like to introduce into 2 types of fibers derived from natural resources, cotton and viscose. Cotton is a mellow plant, and on the picture you can see an open seed capsule of a cotton fruit and the raw cotton obtained from it. It looks like cotton wool. Next picture shows the raw material for viscose, the pulp, with a high content of cellulose obtained by extraction from chopped wood. Next to it, you see a spun fiber and a filament yarn. Looking at the worldwide fiber production, synthetic fibers made from oil products are more important in today's life than natural fibers, accounting for 65%. Plant-based fibers are about 26%, and cellulosic fibers about 6%. which are both biodegradable in comparison to the synthetic fibers. The properties of viscose and cotton are very similar because they both consist of cellulose molecules. Difference arises from chemical modification and further processing. Both fibers are used for outerwear and home textiles. Their wearing comfort is very similar too. The difference is that viscose feels cool on the skin, which is very nice in summer, and but it cannot be washed by high temperatures. How is cotton produced? Cotton is cultivated in more than 80 countries, mainly USA, China, India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, and the EU, with different agricultural methods. The plant grows in large monocultures. Irrigation is necessary, especially the use of fertilizers and pesticides. Some farmers use seeds, which are genetically modified. The seed capsules are mainly harvested by machines, and in some countries, for example Turkey, the capsules are mainly hand-picked. After separation of fibers, capsule residue, and seeds, the fibers are pressed into balls and transported to the spinning mill. Then they are cleaned and carded to reach an alignment of the fibers, which is necessary for spinning and weaving them to yarns or fabrics. The production of 1 kilogram of cotton fabrics requires on average 11,000 liters of water worldwide. In India, even more, up to 23 liters. How is viscose produced? The raw material to process viscose is wood from forests or from tree plantations. Beech, pine, spruce, or eucalyptus is used to obtain cellulose, the raw material for viscose. Wood is mainly harvested mechanically. It is chipped into little pieces. Then the wood byproducts such as lignin are dissolved and removed from the wood with organic solvents such as methanol or ethanol to obtain the cellulose. The raw material is similar to the paper production, but with a higher content of cellulose needed for the fiber. The fiber is chemically modified by means of caustic soda and carbon disulfide, and then the viscose mass is precipitated into filaments through fine spinnerets in a spinning bath, which also contains different substances. Then the filaments are dried in heat, and later on they can spun or weaved. The production of viscose requires chemicals and energy. Now let's have a look on the environmental aspects of cultivation. Cotton grew in a monoculture with high use of pesticides, artificial fertilizers, and water. About a quarter of the insecticides sprayed on arable land worldwide land on cotton fields. And for mechanical harvesting, defoliant are necessary. Instead, organic cotton has a lower water consumption, no use of pesticides, herbicides, and artificial fertilizers. Genetic engineering is needed, but they use crop rotation and organic fertilization. Viscose derived from wood plantations, as monocultures are not very eco-friendly, but using wood from sustainable forestry is an alternative. The extraction of the raw material cellulose from wood is done mechanically, thermally, and with the help of chemical processes. Compared to cotton cultivation, less water, no fertilizer, and no pesticides are needed. Also, the area required is smaller. Now, let's look on the environmental aspects of fiber production. For cotton, in the case of cotton, mechanical extraction of fibers and cleaning of fibers needs energy and water. And in the case of man-made fibers, the fibers are produced by precipitation of a spinning solution in a chemical bath. In Europe, there are usually closed loops. The chemicals are recovered, and the energy used is also further used in the process. A more precise evaluation of both fiber types is difficult, as there are different processes and other parameters involved in the production of fibers, such as where is the fiber grown, which wood from which forestry is used, which chemicals are used, are they used in closed cycles, and how long is the way of transportation, and so on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Conny, for the interesting introductory presentation. We have Caroline Ledl, next speaker from Lenzing AG in Austria, a textile producing company.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for the invitation. So I am from Lenzing Group. Lenzing Group is a company producing fibers from the raw material wood. And therefore, for us, the whole topic of bio-based material and bioeconomy, as well as you see in the title of my presentation, circular economy, is quite important. So, so where do we stand when does Lenzing stand when we look in terms of raw material sourcing for different fibers being used in the textile industry? This is a very brief overview about what kind of fibers are used to create textiles. So on the right side, you see fibers made from synthetics, as we heard already and learned today. Most of the fibers used in the textile industry come from synthetic materials. It's overall around 65% of all fibers for the production of textiles come from mostly classical synthetic fibers. The most used fiber type there is polyester. And then we have more of the fibers coming from the natural part, so bio-based economy. And there we have they can be called natural fibers, where we already heard a lot. Thank you to Conny about the production and the harvesting of cotton. And then Lenzing uses wood as a raw material and produces also something that sometimes it's called man-made fibers from natural polymers. And these are so-called regenerated cellulosic fibers. In this category, you can see viscose, rayon, and modal, as well as lyocell. And the third one or fourth one of these fibers is then also cupro. Yes, and those are mostly natural polymers that are unmodified. As you can see here, so Lenzing Group uses wood to produce intermediate product that is called pulp. It's only the cellulosic part of the wood. It's a bit like the production of paper, and those white sheets They are then used for the production of our fibers. And we have mainly 3 different application types. So that's textiles, what I'm going to talk a bit more today. Then we have non-woven applications, very easily whenever you use a wet wipe, for example, when you have children and babies. I think you're quite familiar with that. And then we also have an area where our fibers are used, for example, for packaging or more for industrial applications. Just very briefly, so Lenzing Group is an Austrian company. We're headquartered in Upper Austria in a nice town called Lenzing. And there we also run a lot of our production. So we have a viscose, modal and lyocell production there, as well as a pulp mill. But we also run other facilities all over the world. So we produce viscose also in Indonesia and in a plant in China. We produce lyocell also in the US and the UK, and in a second facility in the south of Austria. And then you can also see we have different offices also all over the world, just because the textile industry is also very much spread all over the world. A lot of the textile industry is also situated in Asia. So as a multinational company who uses the raw material wood and who also looks very strongly into sustainability and try to always, let's say, be at the top front of the sustainability topics, what are also challenges that we face and that we see? For us, one of the key topics is the responsible wood and pulp sourcing. Cornelia also mentioned this, that in the assessment of the viscose production, really the raw material, so the forest is a very important topic. And we also look at what are the sustainable production technologies, as well as the topic of circular economy. Last but not least, I will unfortunately today not talk about this, will be both microplastics, which is a very important topic within the textile industry, as well as the whole transparency that we want to create within the whole value chain. So when we look at the Lenzing and our sustainability targets and our sustainability topics, we have created this kind of sustainability strategy. We have key topics, circularity, partnering with our customers and also our suppliers for change, and also trying, we call this greening the value chain. And within there, we look at water, we look at CO2, at sustainable innovations, as well as the raw material security. And we try to also look at which kind of the UN's sustainable development goals fits to our own sustainability targets. And as you can see, for example, the first of our targets is to improve our sulfur emission within the viscose and the modal production by 50% until 2022. This is already in 2 years. And this is linked then to the responsible consumption and production goal. And very interesting, currently also, when we look at the whole situation, we've been having the last few months with the decreased also transportation. We see a lot of decrease in air emissions. We as a company have also a target to decrease our carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions by 50% until 2030. And this also then benefits into climate action as well as affordable and clean energy. But as I mentioned before, for us, the wood and pulp sourcing is very important. So we have a very strict sourcing policy, which means we don't source from so-called ancient and endangered forests, no rainforest or For example, as we can find in Canada, also boreal forests. And we also try to have all our wood and pulp sources certified or controlled. So every commercial available fiber was produced by certified and controlled wood, either by FSC or PEFC. And last but not least, we always talk about how much wood is used for different applications. And we can see that we use something that's called dissolving wood pulp, and that's only 1% of the global harvested wood used for this kind of textile fiber applications. And we mostly use eucalyptus, beech, and spruce for the production of our fibers. And when you take the wood and then you create the pulp, which is then the intermediate product before the fiber at our production site in Lenzing and our pulp mill in the Czech Republic, we have something that's called a wood-based biorefinery. This means we try to avoid any waste that could be created by the pulping process. So we take the wood, we chip it, and then within this pulping process, which is a biorefinery, we create around 40% of pulp, which is the cellulosic part of the wood. And then we create around 10% of the wood material, and chemicals is then co-products, so-called biorefinery products. Quite easily, for example, you can think of acetic acid. This is then an acid that is used, for example, for gherkins or also other applications in the food industry, or magnesium lignosulfonates. They are used in cement industry. And so there we can create also other chemicals. Xylose then is turned into xylitol by a partner of us. And this is then used as a sweetener in chewing gum, for example. And the rest of the material will then go into bioenergy, which means it's burned at our site, and we use it for our own fiber production and to run the electricity and heat within our offices. Yeah, and then we also have our fiber production. I'm just very briefly talk about two of our premium products. One is the Tensor Modal fiber. This is exclusively produced in Austria. Modal is an improved process from the viscose production. And as I mentioned, we have also the pulp production at Lenzing. So we have a whole integrated system, which means that for the Tensor Modal production, we also can use our own electricity and steam, leading to a very nice sustainability footprint. And then we have the Tensor Lyocell fibers, and there the specialty is that it uses an organic solvent. It's called NMMO, and the solvent can be reused by more than 99%. So you don't create any chemical waste there. And also the water for the production is still reused. Yeah, and last but not least, when we talk about circular economy, 2 years ago, no, it was already 3 years ago, we launched also a product, a fiber product, which uses recycled cotton pulp as a part of the raw material. So what we do is that we take the waste from the t-shirt production, we decolor it, we recycle it, and then it's blended together with the pulp from the wood chips, and there we create a new fiber out of it, which already includes this technical circle of the circular economy. And we also have a 5-year vision, which then will be in 2024, to increase the recycled content up to 50%, using also post-consumer waste in our production. And last but not least, when we look at the tensile lyocell, which is probably our most environmental friendly product, you can see this is a life cycle assessment, impact assessment done by the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. It's available publicly, so everyone can look it up and compare different materials. And there we can see, so for example, that flax, when we look at beautification and it's not organic, uses, so you use a lot of pesticides, as well as then for cotton, where you use a lot of water. So different fibers have also different impacts. But there, when we look at our Lenzing tensile lyocell, we can see that in this assessment, our environmental footprint is really, really low, also compared to different other fiber types that can be used for the creation of textiles. Yeah, and so thank you very much.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Now, next speaker, Elin Larsson from Resource Sweden. Thank you very much also for your participation.
Yes, okay. So I'm happy to be joining this webinar. So I'm Elin Larsson, and I'm actually the program director of Resource. And for you who don't know what Resource is, it's a strategic innovation program for sustainable use of materials. And we support innovations enabling material use within planetary boundaries with the ambition of making Sweden a frontrunner in circular economy. And thank you, Gottfried, for changing the slide. And what we do is we have open calls, we fund strategic research projects, we host seminars and workshops, etc. Next slide, please. So we will be 9 billion people by 2050 and 3 billion more middle-class consumers by 2030. And that's great. I mean, that means we're 3 billion people rising out of poverty, but it also means that there are 3 billion more people that want to consume the way we do. And that's not sustainable, since we are using resources already today as if we had 1.7 planets. In Sweden only, we would actually need 4. Next slide. And what about clothes? What impact do they have? Well, the textile industry has a big challenge when it comes to sustainability, and it will actually demand a complete change on how we do business, as well as user behaviors, to be able to create the necessary shift. Next slide. 3 to 8% of the global carbon emissions come from the textile industry. So they have a big impact on climate change. And 80% from a garment's climate footprint, looking at the whole life cycle of a product, comes from the production phase. The biggest impact we as users have is if we take the 2-ton heavy car to the store. That stands for about 10%. Next slide. And it's also an industry that uses a lot of resources. And what you see here is general figures for what it takes to produce 1 kilo of textiles. Next slide. Yeah. And from a user perspective, it doesn't look much better. This is figures from Sweden, where we get rid of about 14 kilo of textiles per person and per year. About half of those ends up in the trash. And if you look at what's in the trash, now 60% is in such a good shape that it could actually be worn again. Now, next slide. And there, I think it's actually Ellen MacArthur Foundation saying that every second a full truck of clothes goes to waste around the world. And of all the clothes that get discarded, only 1% gets recycled into new textiles again, and about 20% gets recycled into anything like dishcloths or isolation in cars, for example. Next slide. And so we say 80% of a garment's climate impact comes from production, which is also the phase that brands have less control of. So practically no brands own their own factories. There are a few, but not that many. And in most countries where a lot of clothes, or the majority of the clothes, are produced, energy resources come from fossil fuel, usually coal. Next slide. And except from that, the fashion industry are facing challenges in terms of change of customer behaviors. So many physical stores are closing down due to increase of e-commerce, for example. And it's also an industry that relies on overproduction. And nowadays, we don't only see sales twice a year, but rather the whole year round. We have mid-season sales, we have summer sale, we have Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Singles Tuesday. You know, you can go on and on, getting customers used to even lower prices. Next slide. And this is not going to work in the long run. So we need a transformation on how we do business and how we, as users, update our wardrobes. We need, for example, as a business, we need to consider the product's whole life cycle already during the design phase. So to design with the end in mind, and to make sure that the product can be part of a circular system. Next slide. And we also need to create new ecosystems and partners outside our own industry sector. Like this example, it's from a front-runner project between Filippa K, a Swedish fashion brand, and Axel Johnson International, where round slings from the heavy industry gets recycled into pellets that can be used as fibers for the fashion industry. And those round slings are usually used only once and then thrown away due to security reasons. But now instead they can become resource for someone else. Next slide. And as we heard, I had a figure of 62%. Cornelia talked about 64, but that all materials used in the textile industry, 64% of all materials used in the textile industry are synthetics and comes from oil. So if we instead can reuse already existing materials that's on the market, that has, of course, a very big positive impact. And if you look at polyester, for instance, it's really one of the slowest materials. It takes millions of years to produce. It's very long lasting during user phase, and it takes about 200 years to biodegrade. And still we consider polyester being a fast fashion material due to its low price and high availability, when it should really be the other way around. And we should have the highest respect for this material. And on the picture here, you see another from the Filippa K Frontrunner project, their coat called Eternal Trench Coat, which is made of 100% recycled polyester. It's designed to last over time, and it's fully recyclable in the end. Next slide. But maybe fast fashion can play a role in the future as well. And this is another frontrunner project from Filippa K, where they explored the possibility of creating a dress that would only last for a short time, but still be sustainable. They call it the throwaway dress. It's created from lyocell, actually tencel, in a paper-like material. And by doing that, cutting out several production stages. And still, this is only a concept dress, but in the future, these kind of short life products could be produced locally from non-woven materials, leaving small footprints and being part of a circular system. Next slide. And on the positive side, we have research to guide us. And research shows that, for example, if we can decrease the environmental footprint by 50% by 2030, by decrease our consumption with only 5 pieces per person and per year, and if we would only use best available technique during production. And these techniques are already out there today, so we just have to start using them. Next slide. And you were right. As research shows that we can actually decrease the environmental impact by half if we use our clothes twice as long. And that's great, right? That means that we have to care for our clothes better and make sure that the clothes that we get tired of gets a second or a third life with someone else. Next slide. And when it comes to climate impact, we could then, as we said, decrease it with 49% by doubling the life length and if we make sure that the clothes are produced by solar panels, we could reduce the impact further by 67%. And if we would walk or take the bike to the store instead of that heavy car, we could actually have a decrease of total 78%. So we can actually do something already here and now. Next slide. And kind of to further cheer you up, I would like to give you 2 examples of projects that Resource have funded. So next slide. This one is about Renewcell, who has found a way to recycle old clothes made from cellulosic fibers. It could be some synthetic blend in it as well. And recycle it into new textile fibers by using a chemical method and creating that dissolving pulp that Caroline was also talking about. That could be used for viscose or lyocell materials. And they already have a factory set up, and they have a production going, and they just recently launched a dress made from this material together with H&M. Next slide. And this is a Swedish sport brand called Houdini, and they are exploring circular business models, and they do a lot of things really exciting, so check them out. But for example, they have a take-back system for their clothes, they sell pre-loved clothes in their regular stores, and they rent out garments. And for their latest project, that Resource partly funded, they tried out a subscription model for their clothes with a successful result. Next slide. So I know it's not easy as a customer to make the right choices, and there are many labels, etc. And it's really hard to keep track of them all. My main message would be that it's not only the label that matters, and it's not only what kind of material a product is made of, but rather, next slide. My best advice would be to start demanding transparency and traceability from the brands. That way we would get a chance to view the full picture of a garment's impact. So start asking questions in the stores and to the brands. Where are the clothes made and how are they made? Next slide. And the final advice to you would be that, wash your clothes with care. Don't wash too often. Mend broken things so that you can keep your clothes longer. And if you want to update your wardrobe, borrow, rent, or join a subscription. If you want to buy things, prioritize to buy pre-loved things like secondhand. And if you want to buy new things, make conscious choices and ask questions. And finally, make sure that no clothes ends up in the waste. And since the theme of our webinar is Wear What You Talk, I wanted to show you that I'm actually wearing a shirt made from Tencel. I have a pre-loved earring, and my pants that you don't see are also pre-loved. So I think it's important to, all those small steps matters as well. We as customer has a big impact and a lot of power. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here. Let's start with a first question. Several participants were asking about how to make these sustainable consumer choices, and how to find out and how also to evaluate which of the items is more eco-friendly. Who of you would like to answer? Just raise the hand and just maybe you know an answer to that.
Okay, I can start. No, but it's really hard. It's difficult to know what's the right choice, and that's why I kind of really wanted to highlight that it's really good to ask questions in the stores. There are some good certifications and labels to follow that are more serious than others. Hopefully in a few years' time, we will actually have some sort of product environmental footprint that would actually make it possible for customers to see the impact the product has had. But Cornelia or Carolina, maybe you want to follow up.
Yeah, maybe I can just add something there. Yes, labels are always good, but sometimes it's also not too easy to find out which of them is really also serious. So I think the whole industry is working on creating such a product sustainability and environmental footprint index. And last but not least, I would also say that I think it always depends on what kind of product you are looking for. If you're looking for a basic product that you will wear for quite a long time, then you will also need to look at how the way it is made, and that it also can be worn for quite a long time, because the longer the wearing phase, the lower the environmental footprint.
Thank you very much for your answer. Another question, maybe we stay with you, Carolina. Are fibers from eucalyptus really more environmental friendly than other wood types? What would you answer on that?
Okay, so are fibers from eucalyptus? I would not say that they are more sustainable than from other wood types. One of the benefits eucalyptus gives is that it's very fast growing, and you can have eucalyptus plantations also at sites that are, for example, former agricultural land that is not suitable based on soil erosion. So there you can plant eucalyptus trees and increase also the soil again. But in areas where eucalyptus is not really a species that was there before, like Austria, like Sweden, for example, I would say that the original trees are as sustainable as using eucalyptus.
Okay, thank you very much. Cornelia, I saw that that there was a question to you about what actually Sorona is. Maybe you can summarize that for the participants.
Oh no, that was why I asked the question.
Okay, Carolina, sorry.
I can just very quickly say Sorona is a brand of a specific polyester used in the textile industry.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we got some new questions. I would just read the question out because it arose suddenly. Most new developments were not about bio-based, but about circular. Is circular more important and effectful than bio-based? Maybe Cornelia, you could answer.
It depends on the fiber, on the way to process it, and also the choice between a special fiber is very difficult, because not every fiber may be used for every purpose, and therefore you have every time you have to look what fiber, what process, what purpose, and the way on. Also the whole chain, a lifetime chain of textile.
Thank you. Maybe Elin or Carolina, do you have a spontaneous comment on that, or would you like to proceed to the next question?
No, I agree. I mean, it's always up to the specific fiber. It's up to where the clothes are produced, how they are produced. You have to consider the whole life cycle. And it's the same with circularity. Circularity by itself doesn't mean it's sustainable. You have to make sure that the circular system that you create are sustainable as well. So, and resource effective. So you always have to consider the sustainability aspect. It's not one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. I'll just stay with you. We got a new question, a long one. I have to read it. There are many words outside, such as conscious, sustainable, eco, fair, green. Contrary to the assumption that the environmental friendly attitude triggers the most interest in buying consciously, studies say that fashionableness and likability makes the biggest part in a clothing purchase and would also be for choosing slow fashion instead for fast fashion. How, now the question, how can sustainable fashion bridge the gap and overcome its unfashionable image? I would like to hear Ms. Larsen's comment on that. Thank you. Yeah, that was the question.
So how sustainable clothing can be fashionable? Was that, I'm sorry, I didn't really, is that the question?
Exactly. The question says that there is like an unfashionable image of eco-fashion.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's a shame. I think it comes from how it all started. When we talk about eco-fashion, we see this kind of organic, brownish organic cotton T-shirt in a not very nice material. It doesn't have anything to do with the reality today. So maybe we should just drop eco-fashion. We shouldn't talk about it. You can actually create the most beautiful pieces, and you wouldn't, no matter whether they are you know, conventionally made or sustainably made, you have the options today. So it's all about design. It's all about yeah, I think that's, I guess that's so. But maybe that's an how to say, task for the industry to make sustainable fashion sexy, interesting, attractive, because it can be, it really.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to Caroline. There was a question especially to you about the lyocell. I'll read the question out loud. I'm interested in the use of a reusable dissolvent in the production of lyocell. Is that dissolvent used for the dissolution of primary or of secondary raw material?
Okay, yeah, so the solvent we use is used to dissolve the pulp in the lyocell process. So you get this intermediate product of pulp, which looks like the paper sheets, the white ones, and those then are used with the solvent to generate some kind of it's called dope, so that you can press it through the spinning holes. Yeah, it looks then like a huge shower head where you produce the fibers, and this solvent is really used to dissolve the pulp.
There was a question about how a brand could pivot into sustainability. What are the first steps to take regarding materials used and the supply chain? Yes, thank you.
If that's okay. I would start with making an assessment of what materials are you using today, and then set up a fiber tool where you put scores on each fiber, so that it's really easy for everyone in your company to see which are the preferred fibers that we should use. And there's a lot of research, there's a lot of examples of these kind of fiber tools that you could start looking at, but making it applicable to your organization and your company. And then it's all about, regarding supply chain, you need to start mapping, and not only your first or second tier, you start understanding your full supply chain. It's really important. And once you have the full picture of your supply chain, and this is a lot of work, then you can start asking questions of the impact on each step and making necessary changes. There are some good tools out there that's coming more and more that are good, adaptable for the textile industry, in tools or platform to help you track your value chain. So I can really recommend to look into that.
Thank you very much. It is a big, it is a small difficulty, because when you look at the registrations, you see participants from all areas of society. We have businesses and industry, research, civil society, students. So we hop a little bit towards different topics, but I hope this is okay for you. Thank you, Eileen, for your answer. I would like to ask you now, all three of you, to give your final words on two questions. First question to everybody, and then a second question to everybody. What would be your tip, your recommendation of what to do with old clothes that are not usable for wearing anymore? We start with Caroline, then Cornelia, then Eileen.
So for me, always the question is whether or not the clothes can be reused by you, or they're just so old and worn out. In all cases, I would bring them to those sorting containers. Every city, every town has this. It's especially for textiles. It goes then to sorting companies, and they really know how to treat the different streams and get them to the right either recycling, reuse, or even, let's say, energy production sites.
I would recommend to buy clothes which are long-lasting and pre-loved, and therefore you can use them up till they are ugly, and then I cut them and produce new things like little bags and patchwork or something else.
Yeah, and they actually said it all. I have nothing to add. I agree with both of them. So
thank you very much. Last question to everybody. If you think about sustainable fashion, if you think about bioeconomy and textiles, what initiative would you recommend to look at if you are further interested in the topic? Now we go backwards. Eileen, Cornelia, and Caroline.
Well, there are. I come from a Swedish perspective. Then, to start with, there is this other strategic innovation program called Bioinnovation. They have textiles as one of their focus areas. I would look into that. But in terms of sustainable fashion, I also have to highlight another research program that actually ended, but you can still find the results from it and reports from it. It's Mistra Future Fashion, and there's so many interesting results to get from their research. So I would highly recommend to look into that.
I would recommend the International Association of Natural Textiles. There you have a look at the processes and labels for whole Europe.
Okay, then I bring a bit of a US American view on that. So in addition, I would also recommend to take a look at the work of Textile Exchange. They also have a lot of reports on different fibers and raw materials, and they also create standards, as well as the Sustainable Apparel Coalition.
Thank you for the interesting and diverse input. In 1 hour, you cannot change the world, but maybe you can change your perspective a little bit, and you can learn more. So for me, at least, I learned more, and I am going to look at also the recommendations you got. You got us in the end. Thank you very much. If you have any further questions, we will be here for 5 more minutes, and we wish you all a good evening, and yeah, keep in mind There are ways out of our fossil society. You just have to look at them. Thank you very much.